texts Springer and Folio. Javeid teaches literary theory and criticism, British fiction, Indian writing across genres, modern British poetry. Now, before handing over the desk to the eminent speaker of the day, I'll give a brief introduction about the madam as well. Professor Ipshita Chanda teaches comparative literature at the English and Foreign.
Of how we engage in a conversation, and in fact that is the thrust of when I said speaking and listening, and do diverse things like stolen goods and poetry. I was trying to kind of hint at a fact that there is plurality, and B, there is a relation between these different aspects or entities or objects. And if we have to imagine the idea of an Indian literature, then it can necessarily and only be plural and relation. And I think over the last few days, all that we have discussed, and especially the way in which we have discussed, all of this actually further strengthens what I was planning to say. So in that sense, all that I am going to say has already been said. But I was asked by Ravi Bhushan to speak about didactic literature. And I will be speaking about what is defined as didactic literature. And then I will revert to my usual theme, which is that never mind how it is defined. What we are reading and our understanding and engagement with what we are reading is the philosophical and the theoretical base of our engagement. And I will try to argue that this is an aspect of a pluralist perspective, which is why I have been saying right from the beginning that we are not looking for any kind of purity or hybridity as another value. What we are looking for is, and I mean, now none of this is going to be, or all of this, let me say, is going to be substantiated by A, the list of Subhashita Ratnakosha, and B, the Panchatantra. So that is as close as I could get to what Sir requested me to do. So when I looked up, Yan Gonda's series of history of Indian literature, so in that, under anthologies, Gnostic literature and didactic literature, this is what was found. Of course, I will say this, and this is the whole point, that the Panchatantra was not there in Yan Gonda's, it was edited by Sternbach, so this is volume 4. So Sternbach did not include the Panchatantra there. He only included these things. So I started looking at these things with the idea that didactic literature का मतलब in daily parlance जो हम नीति शास्त्र कहते हैं, तो अगर नीति शास्त्र कहते हैं तो ये नीति शास्त्र तो यहाँ पे है नहीं in the divisions that Sternbach is giving. वो सुभाषितों में फिर नीति शास्त्र से भी quotation है, कालिदास से भी quotation है. So there is, and here I want to just branch out for one moment and say that we are already in a world in which the spoken word and the written word are coexistent. They are complementary to each other. So, which is why I was saying that we are not looking for a division. So let me just start. I mean, I can stop here and we can start a discussion. I was going to refer to. So, and this is Ryder's translation of the Panchatantra. It is in verse. All, as you know, the whole of the Panchatantra is in prose and verse, which is what makes it a katha. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll just start again. This is from Ryder's translation. For if there be no mind debating good and ill, and if religion send no challenge to the will, if only greed be there for some material feast, how draw a line between the man-beast and the beast? I begin with this because our engagement with our plural Indian reality through the English language and its academic and institutional pratibha for translating everything into a common denominator through theory or categories reduces the plurality and the inherent dynamism of the former. The dynamic between the Dvaita and the Advaita, which Sunilji spoke of yesterday, I would submit does not incite us to look for paradigms or models which will provide a theory for everything. So, taking advantage of your indulgence and hospitality, allow me to begin with a mind debating good or ill and make a few conceptual reorientations. I will be speaking about the Subhashita and the Niti Shastra as forms of writing carrying the generic markers and building a repertoire of signification for Kavya and Shastra respectively, especially for the book that is classified as both Katha and Niti Shastra, that is the Panchatantra. In the name of this text, two different genres merge into one. Within this, the Panchatantra, Subhashita frame can be placed the thousands of Churnak, Muktak, Lokokti, sententious constructions, aphorisms, excerpts from everything that is a rasatmak blend of Shabd and Arth, Dhvani and meaning. Philosophically, these are examples of the phenomenon of literature, the event of literature, not the object. Though Rajnish ji yesterday was demurring from using the word literature because of its obvious relation with writing, I suggest that if we follow the Brihaspati Sukta of Rigveda Mandal 10, where it says that the origin of Vak is Sakhya. So, if the origin of Vak is companionship, then, this Sakhya is the root of the very generation of Rasa in the Sahridaya, who by virtue of being human will necessarily be blessed with Bhava, or the has been marked by Western philosophers as diverse as Merleau-Ponty and Hannah Arendt, specifically in their critiques of the hegemonic rationalist scientific discourse aligned to knowledge and science in the West. I will not go into the difference between the basis of knowledge and understanding in various Indian traditions, but will only mention that the dharma of Vak is, as the Atharva Veda says, Samannayasa. Samannayasa Sukta. Something well spoken connects. Accord or harmony with the Sahridaya. And as for the practice of the text, which both Matthew sir and Ajit sir were referring to yesterday and today, whether you write, speak, hear or read, the aim of art in language is rasavesh, according to Kashmiri Shaivites like Abhinav Gupta. Rasavesh is the enabling power of rasa. It's Karyatri Shakti. So in this way of understanding literature and technique, Sahitya and Shastra, where can one fit in didactic literature? So the Panchatantra is a fitting example which poses this question. It's a mysterious book with a plural history. Its name was chosen by a German. Its earliest existence was evidenced by an epic written in Persian and presented to the Mahmud of Ghazna. Taylor recently analyzed it according to the theories of power enunciated by Foucault and Nietzsche. And chiding Taylor for his state-of-the-art instrument of analysis, Philip Maas said, and I quote Maas here, "This carefully written and interesting book does not tell us much, if anything, new about the Panchatantra within Indian culture, but it would most likely tell a perhaps slightly perplexed Purnabhadra, if reborn recently, much about contemporary European interpretations of texts." So, this exchange inaugurates not a binary East versus West story, but an approach to a very old simultaneity between writing and orality that is inherent in what we understand as a plural Indian culture. We require a plural perspective and very specific tools to rescue our thinking from uniformity mistaken for unity and unquestioning adherence masquerading as tradition. Rather, I would like to emphasize that Kavya shares with Sahitya elements of rasa, which is not necessarily present in Shastra. Shastra, according to some of technique, containing the philosophy of action, as well as the minute details of this action, like how to do it. And Tantra, according to Hurtel, who culled the Panch Tantra from the Panch Akhyayika of Purnabhadra, means, according to Hurtel, he translates it in German as wily tricks. That is what he translates. So obviously you can understand the tone of his translation of the Panchatantra, which we sometimes take as the original text. But there is, in fact, that is the story that I will be trying to tell. That this original text fascination comes from people like Hurtel, actually. So I will attempt to juxtapose the category of didactic literature with the category of Kavya, Sahitya, or let me just stick my neck out and call it literature. But this leads to a more crucial point for the students of a plural literary culture that can justly be called Indian. I think there is some error in using categories borrowed from literary studies in Europe and America, because the discourse of a plural literary culture is different from the assumption of a monolingual, monocultural, national literature in the singular. It is not to do with the fact that it is an us and them thing. It is not we are east and they are west and never the twain shall meet. But our reality is not accessible through or to the theories that are generated there, not even the categories, simply. So, no wonder then that poetry is yet to be defined. It is apurva, caused by pratibha, without reason, and separate from the 10 types of pratiti which are termed Laukik, and as well born in the same womb as Brahmananda, Brahmananda Sahodara. But in this arena of experience, of rasa, where to fit in didactic literature? So let me trace a path through the particular evidence in the case of what is known as didactic literature in the history of Indian literature. I already told you this little story about Sternbach's volume in Yangonda's edited series, History of Indian Literature. So there, as I said, the genres that Sternbach enumerates as Subhashita, which is part of didactic literature, the anthologies of didactic literature. The genres are Churna, Mukta, Klokokti, sententious constructions, aphorisms, collected into anthologies of the well-spoken, Subhashita or Sukta, literally. So Subhashita's anthologies of didactic literature are differentiated from sutras, which are unadorned, not constructed in poetic form. Now the tradition of collecting these is traced to Buddhist teachings, where you notice that these are teachings that are collected. So there is, in fact, there a pedagogical element, if not didactic. So the teachings as well as the Jataka stories are constructed. And to cut a long story short, from the teachings that are collected comes the idea of Subhashita, because it originates where Sir does a lot of the oldest recension is found in Kashmir. Yeah. So, and even the last text that I will refer to, which is in the 16th century, also comes from the same place. So, Subhashita comes from these, and the Jataka tales collected within a frame apparently form an idea of a book. But it's not such a simple story, because it is not a book when we first, or rather the first time we hear of a book which contains stories of wisdom is in the 6th century, and we hear of this through a book presented to the Mahmud of Ghazna in the 11th century by Firdausi, who wrote the Shahnama. So the first time that a book is mentioned, literally as a book. So I will tell you an earlier story, which is also in the preface to the Shahnama, which is about the Panchatantra. What we know today as the Panchatantra, that name is not there when it is being written about in the 6th century. But a name emerges later on in around the 11th century from Abul Muqafa. But that name is not Panchatantra. Panchatantra is the name given by the German translator Hertel to Purnabhadra's compilation from the Tantra Khayaka, which is the Kashmir recension that I was referring to. So from Purnabhadra collects from, I think, about 200 odd verses, he brings down 200 odd pages, he brings down, we are talking about manuscript pages, I think, I don't know, 200 odd to 140, and the number of Subhashita go down from 1000 to something like 500 something. So Purnabhadra selects. And Purnabhadra also says that I have been directed to select by Sree Soma only. Sree Soma is the minister. Whose minister? I have not gone into that. But we would know where exactly Purnabhadra is a Jain monk. And there is, both in the Buddhist and in the Jain tradition, prior to this, of frame stories and small stories within frame stories. So, the idea of the frame is present where the stories are written, but not within, and that is what we were talking about in the morning, the complex of position of Kashmir as part of an international trade route, the existence of Islam and different kinds of Islam, as Javeid sir has pointed out. All of these result in texts like, I've wandered from the point actually, but the point I was trying to make is that Niti Shastra is Kavya. So the idea of Shastra and the idea of Kavya is to the idea of intentionality, what I want the reader to hear. And that is where I think the most important aspect of orality in Indian literature, and I'm not saying literatures, because I'm thinking of India as plural. I'm thinking of every single language literature in India, including Sanskrit, definitely, as plural. So, I've really gone off to the end without providing any kind of substantiation, really, but no, I think I will stop there, actually, because both of these, I think I'll just try to read, and I'm very, after Rajnish ji warned people from God, because I'm actually from the eastern part of the country, so he warned that Saraswati did not want to go and listen to the Sanskrit that those people said. And maybe you'll have to bear with me as well. But these are two that I want to quote. One is from this Subhashita, one of these anthologies. That is the second one. The first one is from the oldest extant recension. I don't think that it should be called a recension. The oldest extant text, again translated by Hertel, which is the Tantra Khayaka. From that, Purnabhadra makes the Panchakhyanak, is what he calls it. And in one line there, which is why I think Hertel picks it up also, Purnabhadra himself says that Panchatantra is another name. Panchatantra Par Namak is what he says for this Pancha Akhyanak, which is what he calls his text. Purnabhadra doesn't call it Panchatantra. It is Hertel who uses that name. With the authority of Purnabhadra, that much we can say. Because Purnabhadra says it can be referred to by either name. So, this part which I am reading is not there. in Purnabhadra. So obviously it is not there in Panchatantra either. But it is there in the oldest extant text, and that is the reason why I thought that the idea of Shastra being distinct from Kavya can only hinge on that idea of necessarily. Of course, Kavya will not teach you to do anything, but the language that you use to teach anyone to do anything is not necessarily, the language of stand up, sit down, don't talk. So, the way in which you convey Shastra, because that is exactly what Vishnu Sharma is doing. He is appointed to give lessons on Rajakarya and Niti, that is politics and government, to these sons of Amar Shakti of Mahliyaropa, who are, idiots, to cut a long story short. So therefore, and you notice he, like in the beginning, and I'm not going to quote all that, in the beginning people advise the king that you need so many years to study the Shastras, you need so many years to study Kavya, you need so many years then to read Artha Shastra, and then you will be an educated king. So king knows that his sons are not going to be able to do all this. So therefore, and he appoints Vishnu Sharma. This is only in one version, let me tell you. And I am saying version, that is also wrong. It is in the earliest extant text. So there, the text begins with this, with taking the names of Manu, Vachaspati, Shukra, Parashar, Sasrut, Chanakyaya cha Mahate Namo Astu. Nibha Shastra Kartambha Sakalartha Shastra Saram Jagati Samalokya Vishnu Sharmani Tantra Panchabhire Dashchakara Sumanohar Shastra. I beg your pardon, but you got the idea. Sumanohar Shastra, made out of sparks notes of Manu, Vachaspati, Shukra, Parashar, Susrut, Chanakya, and made Sumanohar after that. So that something gets into their heads, otherwise they are not going to listen. You see. So it is an existing format. I will not talk about the movement of the frame story, I don't think I have time. But these stories actually are put within a frame in the Arabic version for the first time. And I am saying Arabic version because there is no book before the Arabic book as in object, as Sir says it is. You are holding it in your hand, that kind of thing does not exist before. We have accounts of a book being searched for by Barzo, who is the vizier, who is the doctor in the court of Khushru Anushirwan in the 6th century. And Barzo comes, he looks, he is coming to look for wisdom, immortal life. Apparently, the ruler Devasarman of Hindustan, meaning that which is by the river Sindhu, and written in Hindi, which is spoken in the land by the river Sindhu. So he comes not looking for a book, but for the eternal, for eternal life, for the elixir of eternal life. And then a wise man in the court of Devasarman, whoever he may be, says to him that this is not any jari booty that you are looking for. Actually, there is a book which has this, and Devasarman had got it written. When he looked around him and he saw that there are so many great kings, and he asked his minister, how come everybody remembers these great kings? They have died long ago. So his minister, who was later called Vidyapati, his minister told him, the reason why they are known by everyone is because they had books, they patronized writers. So Devasarman had apparently all the stories collected, and that was the book that Barzo found in the treasury of Devasarman. It was so precious that Devasarman did not want to give it out. He didn't want to lend it out even though it was in a library. So it was read out to Warsaw. Warsaw heard it in Hindi. He translated it in his mind or wherever in Punjabi, and then he sent it back to Khushru Anisharwan. In the Arabic version that we have, which is called Fables of, it is called that also in Persian, Pilpe, that is, elephant foot, big-footed, which is apparently a way of saying Vidyapati. All of this is there in the Arabic version. So the story of the Persian is found in the Arabic. The story, because we do not know who is Devasarman. The story of the original is found first in the Persian and then only by dates, because these books actually are found in Kashmir from around the 10th century, these manuscripts I should say, from around the 10th, 11th century, because Purnabhadra's compilation, the Panchakyanak, is 1099. Now before this we can, as I have already said, we have spoken about, or we can go into the Buddhist tradition of a frame story, but that is quite different from the Panchatantra. And also we do not find, as far as I know, but if we can find some more, anybody who has any knowledge of this, because between this mention of a text, actually a book, which is contemporary to Khushru Anisharwan, who ruled in the city, and the oldest manuscript that we have, which is 1099 Purnabhadra, we do not know anything about these stories in any Indian language. We are not taking Persian or Arabic as Indian languages because they were language, or at the time when these traveled, they did not travel through Indian languages, they traveled directly apparently, because the first time we hear a mention of a book which has this wisdom, and the stories are the same with the Panchatantra story. Some of the stories are the same. Now there are lists given by everybody regarding which stories are the same. So actually within the Panchatantra, what we have is, I think, Niti made palatable. And as Ryder says, this Niti is, one comes to a conclusion that one will follow the Niti after one has decided that one cannot live the life of a saint. So the nature and the tone of the translation of Ryder and the nature and the tone of the translation of Hurtle is dependent upon what they have read into the text, basically. So the way we use, or let us not talk about use, the way we read the texts that originate in our own languages, I think cannot, start to look for similar things that those theories or critiques which originate in, and I'm not saying that this is not a natural thing. I am saying that 19th century, and when we're talking about Indology as a discourse which facilitates this, that in the kind of 19th century romantic nationalism which really went wrong and bad, that particular kind of idea of a nation with a militant culture, with territorial ambitions, I don't think I need to say to this audience that that is not the reality that we inhabit. So there is no way in which our literatures are going to be accessible, or our cultures are also going to be accessible. such theorization. Thank you. I mean, sorry sir, there are very little about Niti Shastra here, except a few.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Indeed, it was an insightful lecture. Now the house is open for discussion.
Yes. Does anyone have any questions?
That is one reason why I'm asking also. Is there? So I would like to know if there is. Because this is the... That is true, which is why we don't need to use biographical models to understand. कोई original book में आप कहाँ जाएंगे अभी? क्या क्या जरूरत है क्या? The book in the book form, मतलब collected एक जगह.
आख्यान है, आख्यान literally means oral narratives.
हाँ हाँ. वो अलग-अलग stories अलग-अलग हर जगह आपको मिलेगी. मतलब जातक से लेकर और फिर stories तो आपको शायद मतलब I don't know if I read it. In the Mahabharata you will have. तो ये इनको चाहिए तो मेरी आवाज जा रही है ये तो परफॉर्मर है नहीं तो यार these ये collection जो है ना that is what I was referring yeah this collection is what I was referring to the collection is your वही हर्टल पंचतंत्र तो made by हर्टल क्योंकि उसका नाम तो कुछ और ही था जहाँ से पूर्णभद्र टूटे that is तंत्राख्यायिका पूर्णभद्र made it into पंचाख्यानक अब वहाँ पे एक लाइन इन्होंने लिखा था ना कि another name for this is पंचतंत्र तो इन्होंने उसमें डाल दिया that's all there is to this story तो इसीलिए हमने कहा कि it is named by a German and no, it is there also in the scholarship that Hurtle is always looking for original. So that is a mode of engagement. अभी हम क्यों देखें original?
Yes. That is easy.
हाँ इसमें अरे आप एमयूटी बोलिए आप
Because I also came to know later that it is a compiled text known as Panchatantra. In the earlier times, when my friends were studying Sanskrit literature, they would show me the books, Mitrava, Hitopadesh. They have never read it as Panchatantra in Sanskrit, it was Hitopadesh.
Hitopadesh अलग है. Hitopadesh stories are the same. A lot of stories are the same across. वो that is one thing because people keep saying it's an emboxed structure को frame के लिए emboxed बोलते हैं but it leads from one story into another मतलब कोई पूछता है ना कि ये कैसे हुआ या क्यों हुआ and then it so that Sarit Sagar thing is a better thing to say than emboxed structure is what I think ये मुझे because I mean so,
in fact, there is a massive body of narrative literature and very large body. अभी आपने कथा सरित सागर का नाम लिया है और जातक हैं, थेरी गाथा हैं, थिर गाथा हैं, and then of course through the Middle Ages, the verse narratives of heroism and love, practically in most languages. And we are great storytellers, and the culmination, of course, the great love stories of Punjab. Soni Mehwal, so that's important. The narrative structure, the structure of the Mahabharata itself is a kind of a linked narrative. So narrative structure and the notion of narrators, and also who is the author, that is also problematic, and who is the audience, that is also problematic. In fact, I mean, if we look at any major text like Mahabharata, वैशंपायन है, उग्रश्रवा है, वो कुरुक्षेत्र गए, वो समर आश्रम में गए, वहाँ प्रवेश किया, जन्मेजय के आगे में सुनाया, तो the linkage, as you say, this is the story is told and they said, जैसे के उसका हुआ, उसने किया, and then उसने किया, उसने क्या किया? एक what I want to, loudly think is, sometime long time back, in IAC, there was a session of holding discussions on the original Mahabharata, the original Ramayana, the original this, and authentic, building the authentic. And where, I used to take a very strong stand that in India, this is the irrelevant exercise. And to say that we build one authentic text of anything, there is immense, in fact,